Today's episode of The Hive with Us, I'm your host, Mr. Daniel Martinez. Today I have special guest, land investor, Mr. Mike Marshall. What part of the country are you from today? We're calling from today.
Yeah. How you doing today?
I'm good, man. I'm good.
Good to be with you. Thank you for the opportunity.
What part of the country are you from?
Right now I'm living in Texas, but I'm originally from California. So yeah, I made my way here. And so I've been here for about a year or so now. So kind of new implants. Doing good.
What part of Texas?
East Texas, just about a half hour east of Dallas.
Okay. By Tyler?
Yeah, in between Dallas and Tyler, actually. Yep.
Okay. We just did a deal in Greenville.
Okay. Yeah, absolutely. Yep. Not too far.
I'm familiar with here. I live in California, so we do a lot.
Okay. What part of California are you in?
I'm in San Diego and LA, in the middle.
Okay. So I used to live for years, like northern LA County, kind of like where Magic Mountain is, if you know where that is. So I was like right there. Okay, good for you. You're good.
I live here, but don't go over there.
Good for you. Perfect.
It's funny. How long have you been doing real estate?
Yeah, I've been in like land development and like planning and zoning, that whole profession for over just about 20 years now. I spent about 15 of it working in like the public sector, so working for jurisdictions in Texas and California.
Really?
Yeah, doing like planning and zoning work. So working on everything from like custom single-family homes to large 1,200 lot residential subdivisions, medical office buildings, and then like a TV and movie studio campus towards the end of my time with the jurisdiction on there. And so did a whole lot of stuff, got a whole lot of experience, and so was able to transfer that over onto the investment side eventually.
I'm sure that's probably the best experience you can get.
Yeah, getting paid to get all that real world experience was really useful. And, I made a whole lot of different contacts along the way. And I was able to kind of bridge that gap where I was able to help some of the customers that were at the city I was working at, help them on other projects outside that city, and then kind of gravitate and build my consulting business. And then that's how I left and went out on my own.
That's crazy. This is I think it's one of the, even doing that for so long, I think it's one of the real examples that you can use even if you have a 9-to-5 job, you can use that to your benefit if you know what direction you want to go. And I'm not sure if it was intentional or not, but I mean, that's a great lead up.
Yeah. I think what it was like early on, as a kid, my dad had some real estate and I was kind of exposed that way for a while. And then I always wanted to get back into it as an adult, but I kind of came to work for a city in another profession and then ended up gravitating towards it. So yeah, there was some intention there to be within the real estate space, and then I never knew I was going to be there for that long and gather that much experience, but it became extremely useful.
Extremely, extremely useful. I mean, I'm in my head, I'm thinking like, man, that'd be a good little notch in my belt right there.
Yeah. I mean, absolutely. I mean, that's what I leverage our whole business off of is really, trying to bridge that gap, because that's what happened is I kind of noticed there was this gap between like planners and people at the city and then investors, and like nobody was able or willing to kind of bridge that gap. And so that's what I kind of predicated everything I did off, was trying to make that complex world more easily to understand for investors so that we can capitalize on it. So that was kind of my whole intent.
I think one of the biggest things is 100% the county wants to like fight certain developments, and we as developers bring in revenue and tax revenue back to the community. We actually build communities where we're bringing in retail tenants or mobile home parks or housing. Like we actually provide development, even warehousing. Like we actually might build a ground up development and actually bring in jobs. So I think the city should be our friends, not our enemies.
Yeah, absolutely. And obviously there's like this whole concept, this whole reality out there where there's that adversarial relationship. But if you can find a way to do what the city wants and still achieve your investment goals, like that's the whole thing, right? Sometimes it doesn't work. Sometimes, the jurisdictions are very late to come to the reality of what the market is actually telling us. And so sometimes it just doesn't work out. But a lot of times you can go in there if you go in with like the right mindset, and the intention of actually doing something that the city wants at the same time as achieving your goals, you can do really well.
So I actually have a funny story about this, and this is very pertinent to this conversation, which is very weird and rare that it happens. That's why I want to bring it up. We actually just went to meet. We went to the county, go talk to the zoning development committee and all that stuff, and we ended up meeting the mayor. And it was like a weird interaction. And the mayor's like, yeah, I can pull some strings and like just tell us what you want. And it was like that. It seemed like we're gonna have like a good relationship with the city.
Yeah.
But the mayor was like, yeah, I can pull some strings. I have a little bit of power. And I'm like, okay, this is gonna be interesting.
This show is sponsored by HiveMind CRM. It is more than just a CRM. It is a real estate and business mastermind that comes with an all-in-one CRM. You can have unlimited websites and users. You can call, text, RVM, and email all in one user interface. And you can set up custom automations for any type and multiple businesses. 65% of companies start using a CRM system within the first 5 years of business. Once implemented, the HiveMind will save you on marketing, give you more time, and make more money. One of our users had his first $100,000 month using our system in June. We want to see you automate and accelerate your business. Text us at 210-972-1842 for future meetings, and of course to get our $1 course on how to make more than 6 figures on one land deal. You can schedule your free demo today at hivemindcrm.io.
Yeah, there's like that spot where you like kind of step into the political world a little bit, you know, and that's the reality of the development business, though. There is a political component to it, you know, and so it is very much relationship driven.
100%. So what do you help cities understand the investment side and kind of work with them, or do you help the investors help the city side so they can create a cohesive, like what's your dynamic as far as what you do on either side? Because I think they're both very pivotal.
Yeah, it's more that it's coming from helping the investor understand what the city would allow for, what you can do with the property within those regulations. And so that's the primary focus. And then what it is that we do project management as well. So if we have a client that wants us to manage one of their projects, we'll kind of usher it through that entitlement process for them. They're looking over our shoulder as much or as little as they want, but we're trying to help kind of streamline that process and kind of eliminate some of the roadblocks that we typically have seen. So our whole thing is to be able to get our investor clients to understand, you know, what the process is, but then also help get them through it that much faster and easier. So it's more education and working with the investor. And then when it comes down to the specific project, then there is some of that with the city as well.
Yeah. We have a couple. One thing we like about Texas is the 10-acre rule.
Yep.
So we do a lot of that, but we're venturing into smaller parcels, which is actually going to the city, getting approval. So we're just diving into that side of it. So I'm curious to see, like, is there any counties you could say that are easier than others? Because we try and us personally, we try and stay away from like the major cities and out of the ETJ, but we're usually operating in the outskirts counties of all these major cities because they're usually a little bit more flexible and they want that development.
Yeah, if you're outside the ETJ or even inside the ETJ, in some cases, you're not going to deal with zoning. So that's a good thing in a lot of ways, just because you're not going to have to deal with those hurdles. If you are inside the ETJ, then like usually there may not be zoning, but the city will still have control over subdivision regulations.
Yep.
So to your point, if you want to streamline that subdivision process, yeah, if you could stay outside the ETJ, then you're better off. At that point, then like there isn't necessarily like counties that are more favorable than the others. The only thing I tell people is that, you know, you could subdivide land all day, but you need to have demand there. You know, you have to quantify that demand side of the equation. So whether it be for housing or if it's for hunting tracks or whatever you're doing, you got to make sure that there's demand there, because otherwise, you know, you're just going to sit on that stuff. And so we try to educate the people that we work with on that. But yeah, you know, and the thing is with that 10-acre exemption, there's about 16 other states throughout the country that have very similar exemptions that apply. And there's some states that have exemptions that apply that are actually smaller than smaller than 10 acres. And so those ones are attractive because if you can cut them down even smaller, you can take advantage of that price per acre differential from the parent parcel down to the child parcel that much more. And so there's those opportunities that are out there for sure.
Do you have those lists of those states?
Yeah, we do. We have it on our website. We actually offer it to our coaching members that we work to. So it's inside of that. We're updating it right now and maybe releasing it out to the public soon too.
Okay. Yeah, that's one of the things where like we've done a lot. We've done so many deals in Texas.
Mm-hmm.
So many deals in Texas. I know there's other states that are similar to that. So we've been trying to like we haven't necessarily had time to do the research because, like, I think Texas is so big that we can literally stay in Texas and not ever have to go in any other states. But
Yeah.
sometimes opportunity arises in other states, so we're always like, I don't know, but it looks good if we could do the same thing. And I'm like, I don't know.
Yeah, yeah. Do you guys do work in California then too?
We get a lot. We get deals from Oklahoma, Colorado. We usually most of the deals are Texas and Florida. We've
Okay.
done a few deals in Florida, not necessarily subdivide, just like basic land flips.
Right.
But mostly all our subdivides and like development stuff has all been in Texas because we already know Texas regulation. So that's like the little notch in our belt. Like we know Texas regulation very well.
Right.
So we do what we know. You know.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So you guys are just going in and getting a surveyor, basically. They create the meets and bounds description and just go record it at the county, and that's pretty much the end of it, right?
Pretty much, yeah.
Yeah, no, that's great. That's great. Yeah, understanding the nuances of the subdivision regulations can be really beneficial. There's in California, if you split anything, you're going to have to go to the planning commission hearing and all this other stuff. But there's little nuances in of that even still where you could take advantage of things where you can cut that process in half. Again, it's just knowing the rules, just like anything else. Just like you're saying, Texas. And if you're in California, a lot of people stay away from that for a variety of reasons. And I understand that. But there are ways to cut that process down, especially when you're doing lots that are 4 or fewer. If you're creating 4 or fewer lots, that's an opportunity to really streamline that process, and dollar for dollar, you may end up being better off in that situation too.
Yeah, and I like I said, we're venturing into the other states right now and looking at those opportunities because it's just learning the individual state. I mean, you have to go through the research, do deals there, and you kind of learn the process. And every state and county is going to be a little different, but it's all based off the same framework in most cases.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the main, I think, idea is that if you're cutting up large parcels of land and you're not proposing any improvements like roadways and utilities and all these other things, there's really not a lot for the county to really review at that point. So they're not going to, clog up the system when they don't really have much to look at.
That makes sense. That makes sense. This is why you always follow a little acronym. I don't know who said it, but keep it simple, stupid.
Like, yeah, it's so true, man. Simplicity is a virtue, man. Like, just to not like boggle your mind with all that stuff. Because I mean, once you start doing like large, what they call major subdivisions, so many other things start to kick in. You're looking at water and sewer and roadway improvements and dedications and development impact fees, and like those are all fine and well. It's not to say that big deals aren't worth it. They certainly can be, but you got to like kind of balance it out and understand that sometimes it's not worth the headache. And the thing that I usually tell people that we work with is keep your land flipping business going, keeping that moving, and then try to do like 1 or 2 of these a year and see how you take to it.
100%. I agree with that sentiment 100% because like the larger development entitlement deal plays that take a year, 6 months, 12 months, 18 months, 24 months, depending on your county or state. So if that's your last meal, you're going to starve.
Yeah, that's exactly it. And then it's hard too unless you have investors that are used to that, then it's hard to convince them to stay on board with you for that amount of time.
So let's segue into that because I think that's one of the biggest problems we have as land investors is building up that credibility because there's billions and trillions of dollars for other investment classes, but for land, it's always the last one to get funding, and it's like a struggle for every land investor out there.
Right.
And we've kind of grown into it, and we're kind of dealing with it in our own way. But like, what's your solution to kind of building and finding funding for land as a whole?
Yeah, I think it is definitely harder. There was a time in like the land flipping space, at least, where if you were getting funding, they would want 50% of the profits, and they would want to double their money. That was usually like the goal, And I think that's kind of relaxed a little bit in some instances, especially if you're looking at bigger projects. The challenge is, and entitlement stuff, is that there's not a lot of institutional funding for like raw land acquisition prior to you having the approvals in place. Once you have entitlements and like maybe engineering permits and even building permits in place, it's very easy to get, or not very easy, but it's easier to get institutional funding at that point. So what you really need, I think, is you just need people that are experienced in the land space that are willing to go and put their money in and kind of take on that risk. That's what the whole thing with it. That's why land developers don't like doing the entitlement process, is because they have the perception of it being risky. But if you can go in and get those entitlements in place, you're adding certainty to an uncertain situation. And that's why you're creating value through the use of entitlements. but you definitely just need to get like people that are familiar with the land flipping process and turning dirt to be able to putting in money to it. So it's about creating that network of people again, and you just got to build that up over time and build your resume. And then if you don't have a resume, then you got to just lean on other people that do, partner with them, JV with them, be willing to do some of the legwork. It's all the same stuff we've heard, in real estate investing for a long time. So if you're willing to do some of that legwork, and you can JV with somebody that can bring in the money, then that's great. That's the way to go. The other thing that we do too, we have our people look at the opportunity to JV with the actual landowner too. And that's another way of kind of reducing your investment in the deal, at least on the front end. So especially if they're wanting, see, here's the thing, right? In land flipping space, we're always looking for the motivated seller. And that motivated seller has the ideals they're going to give us a greater discount. In a situation with entitlements, especially, you're adding value. So you can offer more money as a result of that. Yep. And also with the help of that is that you can get closer to the seller's asking price as well. So you get closer to their asking price, and then you can even split the upside to a certain degree as well. And, as long as they hang on and keep the property off the market while you go through the process, you can set it up that way.
100%. It's like you said, segueing into another thing. I actually have a call right after this talking to a seller who essentially pitched himself an ovation. Like, he's like, I want to partner with you guys, help me take care of the mortgage, because he got like 75 acres with a house. So he's like, help me take care of this balance that's due every month. I'll partner with you. I'm like, I mean, that's like a home run. Like, let's go.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, there's so many opportunities, to like kind of force that appreciation on a property, and get stuff going, and we deal with subdivisions. We also do like rezoning work as well, and so there's a lot of ways to kind of skin the cat, so to speak.
So I want to dive into this because I want to make some apartment investors mad. This is always the fun part, but I spoke in an event this past weekend, and I was like, who here's an apartment? I'm like, I had a couple raise their hand. What if imagine if you could value add just by adding paper? And they're like, what?
Yeah, it's true. It's so true.
Let's talk about value add by adding paper. So the power of the pen and paper can do a lot of damage in the land space. So,
yeah, you sure can. And I mean, I just think of the rezoning idea, and I'll give you an example. There's one that we're working on in Florida right now, and just the value lift from where it is today to once it's rezoned, it's almost a 7-figure lift just in getting it rezoned. So right now it's agriculturally zoned, and the idea is that it's going to go to an apartment building essentially, so like 200 units. And in that whole process of changing the zoning, you have a value add just in, about 7 figures, pretty close to it, just in that process of getting the rezoning done. And so it's about identifying the opportunity. It's about understanding the process, having the right people on your team to be able to do it, and then be able to really be in a market that's really in favor of rezoning. And so that's one of the things that you can do with regards to rezoning is you look at the number of rezoning cases that have gone before the planning commission and city council. If they've been in a habit of approving these, you can see that there's like momentum going in that direction, and that bodes well for like a rezoning type of situation. So that's just one example of using paper to add massive value. You're never touching it.
Yeah. I was like, I pick on houses sometimes, but we're gonna pick on multifamily today. And I always it's like you have to speak in their terms. You have to speak in their language, because a lot of people will go over their head as far as what you're talking about. So I always think the word term value add. Like, we're gonna value add this property just by adding paperwork. But what does that look like? When we talk to the county, we do ABC, and this is what and that's even, you can even use that when you're raising capital too. Like, hey, this is the value add we're gonna do to this property just by adding the paperwork.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it could, and like the idea of using paper to add value, I mean, it doesn't even have to apply to big projects like we're talking about. I mean, it could apply to little vacant lots, inside of subdivided areas. You can have situations where you have a non-conforming lot that's too small per zoning, and you technically can't build on it right now. But if you can navigate that process, get necessary variances approved, again, just paperwork, you can add massive value just in doing that too.
Yeah, there's a lot that they're historic properties that are just subdivided wrong, and now new ordinance makes it unbuildable. So you're dealing with a nothing you can do with a lot till you solve that problem. And I think it all comes down. Real estate comes down to solving the problems, whether it's paperwork or inheritance and stuff like that.
Right. Yeah, it's like people or the paperwork that's involved, one of the two. Yeah, very much so.
100%. So it's always a unique thing, just not having to build. And let's talk about this. So this is a good question for you, I think. Is I always tell people, I network with a lot of investors on Twitter, and there's like developers, and like in New York and New Jersey, you have to like buy the property and then go through all this entitlement stuff because the process takes so long, and they're kind of like betting on this potential property that could be approved, that we could build this amazing thing,
Right.
So like what is like, I personally avoid having not to shovel or get contractors in there to kind of do things. Like what's your opinion on like, and for us we might do roads and water lines and stuff like that, but we're not putting in homes or nothing.
Yeah.
What's your opinion on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think in a lot of ways, I mean, again, I guess there's personal preference, but I would try not to put in any physical improvements if I didn't have to. Sometimes you're going to have to, and sometimes that's based on what the jurisdiction requires, so they may require or allow for you to get your subdivision plat approved without doing certain improvements. Sometimes they're going to require you of it. So a lot of the gamesmanship involved in it is understanding what's required and then also what the timing is associated to that requirement, because ultimately you may be able to kind of kick that thing down the road to the next person in line. So if you're just doing the entitlements like me, I'm not the developer necessarily. I'm going to sell to a developer. And in that situation, I'm trying to push as much as I can off of me in terms of the financial obligations. But you also have to be mindful too, that if you put too much on their side, that might kind of distract them or detract them from actually buying the property too. So there's a little bit of give and take, but you do have to look at it and understand what those costs are, when they're due, and if there's a way to kind of work it so that way it's in your favor.
Yeah, and I think I'll comment on that part. You have to know all the underlying. Your engineer has to get the underlying costs of that, because if they pass that to them, you don't want to like, oh, you figure it out. Like how?
Right.
Oh, I'll sell it to you at this price, but you have to tell me what you want. Like you have to really do a lot more due diligence on your side and know what price makes sense whenever you're exiting, because 100%, I don't want to build it. I don't want to dig a shovel. I don't want to do any of that work. I'm just doing the paperwork and finding the property and creating opportunity. Our job as developers is to essentially serve it on a silver platter to the next person.
Yeah, exactly. And so, so it's understanding that delicate balance that's there, and the thing is, it might be different based on the project that you're working on too, and the property that you're at. So sometimes I always say that it's like a highway and you can get off at different points, and so you can get off after the entitlements if you wanted to, or if you wanted to have a contractor and do all the subsurface utilities and all the horizontal development, you could get off at that exit. So you can kind of choose where you're getting off. And so it's about kind of what your experience and preference is. Mine is that I'd like to get off when the paperwork's done, and get done with the entitlements and be done and move on. And, and that may not be where the biggest, profit is. A lot of times it's going to be really towards the developer, but in large part, that kind of makes sense.
They have the most risk as well, because they have to buy, build, shovel, and then it might not run out,
Right. Well, and they're under a time gun too, right? Because all the costs, whether it be labor, materials, or fees to the jurisdictions or whatever else those things may be, those things are all kind of burning at them at the same time. So yeah, it makes sense.
No, 100%, 100%. I like the analogy of getting off on whatever exit you want, and I think that's for everybody listening. That's a great analogy, because a lot of people, they think they have to take it. And I've seen so many developers, they'll go in, do all the entitlements, and then they'll build the house. And I'm like, you can exit at any point, and you don't have to do this. You don't have to go down that road if you don't want to.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of investors like, oh, I want to actually design and build this thing. And I'm like, why? Mm-hmm. Why go that far? You already did all the work to make money. Why not monetize it from A to C versus A to F?
Yeah. I mean, I guess unless you have like unique experience or that's just your jam, that's your thing, I guess I get that. But, you got to balance like profits, and you also have to balance your time and frustration, So again, it's like in anything in life, right? It's important to know where your skill set is. And like if I was a contractor, then I would certainly look at that, but that's not me. And so I just know that right where I need to get off the highway, like we said, and so I'm sure there's value. I mean, obviously there is, that's why the business is there, but I know my role. I think that's a kind of a real important takeaway.
Do you have an opinion on creating affordable housing?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, housing shortage is a big deal, in a lot of states, California, Florida, a lot of other states too. And so what you're seeing right now, you're seeing like the state legislation or the state, lawmakers, they're making legislation to kind of streamline the development process, get units on the ground, whether they're affordable or not. I think that what's interesting is that it needs to make sense. Obviously, even like an affordable housing developer, they still need it to make sense for them. And a lot of times they need like land donated to them from the city and stuff like that. So it gets really complex. I think what's more realistic is instead of a complete affordable housing project, it'd be a market rate project that has affordable units that are blended into it. And when you do that, then you can get some incentives from the jurisdiction. Most of the time it's added density. So, if you have 10 units per acre as is, but you get affordable housing units in there, then they may allow you to go up to like 13 units an acre or whatever happens to be. And so there's usually those kind of like benefits that come along with providing affordable housing. So I think that's more the reality. That's what I see more often than not, is some sort of integration into a certain number of units. And a lot of jurisdictions are mandating either that and or senior housing as well.
That's probably the best answer I've heard. I've asked that question to a couple people in like lending space and in this development space a little bit, and no one's have a good answer as that. And I think it's been the best answer so far. So I appreciate that, because
nice.
It's such a hard question, and I like the people's responses, because I think we live in a capitalist country, and it's hard to actually incentivize people to build for free.
Yeah, absolutely it is. And then unfortunately, like they have to overcome the stigma that's attached to it. And it doesn't help to go in and build an affordable housing project and like have it aesthetically look like, just like square stucco boxes. You have to make it an attractive living environment. So there are some really good affordable housing developers that do that, and they do a great job at it. So it's about partnering at that point too, getting the city to partner with the right developer to be able to get that to happen.
Yeah. I think that might be the solution, man. Density, allowing the more densities. That way they can monetize that situation a little bit more than they thought, and they create the right property for the right people.
Right. Absolutely. Agreed.
I think, man, that was a good answer. That was a really good answer. Cool. I really appreciate that one. That was good. I hope people out there like that one too. But I think a lot of people want to change. They want to change the dynamic of, I want to make better for the environment, I want to provide affordable housing, but like no one really has a solution.
Yeah, I mean, obviously some of those things are such huge, massive problems, and then when you add money into the picture, that changes the context of it and everything. And so, yeah, it depends on the jurisdiction too, I mean, and where they're at. And a lot of these jurisdictions get pressured to get affordable housing units on the ground. And then again, because of stigmas that are attached to it, you have a lot of decision makers that really don't want it, but they're being mandated by the state to be able to provide it. And so even that being the case, there's still like these roadblocks, and there's still, they drag their feet. It becomes really problematic. So you got to get those units on the ground, but you got to make it streamlined and easier. And that's one other thing that they'll do too, is that if you have put in affordable housing units, they'll streamline the approval process in some instances. And so that's kind of a benefit too, because it saves time, obviously.
Is there a gem that you took from your previous experience working with the counties that is like, I use this every time in every deal, that like the one thing that's kind of in your tool belt forever that you learned from that experience?
There's like the soft stuff, like, the relationship stuff, and making sure that you have the right people in the jurisdiction that you're working with that you can go to all the time, that are reliable, that you can go to and get your answers, and that's really, really important. You'll find that a lot of jurisdictions are very tough to work with. They don't communicate well or anything like that. But if you can create that relationship, that's going to be key. And if you can't, then you got to find somebody that does have that relationship. And a lot of times that's like a civil engineer, somebody that's doing projects in that jurisdiction, The other thing I'd say too, like the biggest probably takeaways I'd say is that like the planning and zoning department is really like the closest thing to a crystal ball that you'll ever have in terms of like understanding what's going on in development, because they're basically going to be 2 to 3 years ahead of what's going to end up on the ground. And so if you want to understand what's going on in your area, you got to track growth. You got to look at what's going on at the planning level. So having conversations with them, understanding zoning, understanding like where that growth pattern is a huge thing as well. And then the last thing I'd say is that, there's the devil's in the details, right? And so there's a lot of opportunities that are out there to like add value and do different things. And it's based on the nuances of the zoning regulations. And unfortunately, depending on how you look at it, the jurisdictions write the language of those zoning codes oftentimes to give themselves flexibility in interpretations. And so they want the ability to interpret it one way or the other based on the circumstances. And so again, it really is based on relationships and getting those favorable interpretations.
One of the biggest things I'm going to tone on is the person in the office that is already doing it. That is a huge gem for everybody here. If you find out who that person is, you're going to get approved every time.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's such a huge one.
It's so true, and it's hard too if you're like doing your investing from a distance. That's a little bit hard to do, but you just got to get people on your team, those boots on the ground that are going to be able to develop those relationships or already have them in place. Yep. There will always be somebody in every jurisdiction that's kind of like the grease man, the one that like gets them the things through, and they have the relationships to be able to do that. And so you find who that person is who can basically lobby and advocate on your behalf. That becomes really, really useful. And that becomes more useful when you're looking at larger projects. Yep. I'm a big proponent of like flying under the radar and kind of doing projects where I can add value and then get in and get out and not have to deal with a lot of that stuff, because you can just cause yourself less stress a lot of times. That's all. It's different strokes for different folks.
That's so funny. I love the grease man term. It's so funny. But it's 100%. It's 100% true. There's that person in the office that goes there. And I remember when I first started real estate investing, there was a guy. I ended up going to the county for whatever reason, and I saw the same guy twice. So I stopped that guy.
Yeah. Yep.
I ended up going there 2 random days, and I ended up seeing the same guy twice. He was walking out with like the permit plans, and he went there with his plat. And I'm like, okay, that's the guy I need to talk to. I don't know why, but that's the guy I want to talk to.
Yeah. I'd even see jurisdictions where like former employees will hang out in the lobby and will like, do things for different developers and stuff like that, and they just work off of their relationships again, And I saw that in city of Austin quite a bit when I was doing stuff down there. And yeah, it's just getting to know like the right people. It just breaks the ice, because a lot of planners and stuff, they will immediately put up a wall because they just have that preconceived notion that you're out there to kind of, do evil.
You're the shark in the water.
Yeah, exactly.
You're the shark in the water trying to steal and do bad things.
Right, exactly.
We're not going to approve you because you're a foreign entity.
Yeah, exactly. No, very true. Very true.
So it's very, very nuanced. One thing I want to ask you too, and I thought of it later, but I asked you about private capital for land in general. This is really circling back. Sorry about that. This is really circling back. I had the thought, and I'm like, I need to bring it up again. Okay. But building up your resume, partnering with the right people, and then there's always a lender for your project. You just have to talk. You just have to find them. I learned this from a commercial broker I had on here a couple of weeks ago. He said there's always a lender for any specific project. It's just finding and talking to the right person. So if you can't get funding, you need to do some more searching.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, the thing that I try to keep in my mind is that, money always finds good deals, and good deals find good management. So it's really the good deals come out of the people that can manage those deals and have that experience. And those good deals will always find money. Yeah, I believe that to be true.
What is a quote that is yours or somebody else's that you resonate with?
Simplicity is a virtue. That's my biggest thing, man. You cannot buy or sell, your peace of mind, And that thing is that's unique about that is that it's different for everybody, And so like, while I have the knowledge and experience to probably do like big projects and stuff like that, sometimes I'd rather not because of the stress and everything that's involved in that. I'd rather kind of utilize my knowledge and kind of work between the nooks and crannies, fly under the radar, whatever other analogy you want to use. But like I said, simplicity is a virtue, because no matter what, you can't let the world kind of infect your mind like that, And so sometimes that business of land development can be very, very stressful. And so you have to have the right personality for it. So getting to know yourself is really, really important.
I want to pick on the house people a little bit. What do you have to say to the house flippers out there that maybe are interested in land?
I mean, if I was choosing house flipping versus land flipping, I would certainly go and deal with like the land flipping situation a lot faster. Just, I think for me, again, everybody's different, but like you're dealing with people in their house and their personal home. I think that's just such an emotional thing. Or even if it's their parents' home or something like that, it's such an emotional thing. So dealing with the emotions that are involved in that's a lot more to deal with. And then obviously there's the competition aspect and everything like that. Some people love it and that's great. But for me, I stay away from it primarily just because I don't want to deal with the emotional aspects that are associated with like that homeowner like that.
100%. I agree with you on the same thing. Where can people find you online? I have your tolospropertygroup.com here, and tell us about what you do and what services you provide.
Yeah, absolutely. So you can go to the website, tolosapropertygroup.com. On there, we have like a free webinar about forced appreciation. That's kind of how we see ourselves. We see ourselves as forced appreciation specialists. So you can go on and see all of that stuff there. There's a whole thing there. You can see all of our services. We do have a coaching program. We do have like a webinar series that we're starting up at the end of the year here. So you can take a look at that as well. And then on Facebook, you can find our group. It's called Forced Appreciation Strategies. You can check us out there too.
There you go. Well, thank you, Mike. I really appreciate you coming on. I think for everybody here, I think I asked some pretty good questions, and hopefully it was a switch up from your usual episodes. But thanks for coming on and giving value to the community. And I hope everybody here learns at least one good thing they can take away and put in the notch in their belt for.
All right. Thanks so much.
Thanks for tuning in, guys. Like, subscribe. You know what to do. We'll see you in the next episode. Thanks for tuning in, guys. Bye.
Hey guys, so the Hive Mind is launching a new program where we're helping you work deals that are valued at $1 million and up. If your deal is worth $980,000, we don't want to take a look at it. You can submit those deals to us at submitbigland.com and we'll help you comp the deals. If it's good, we'll help you close it and we'll also help you fund it and sell it. Check us out, submitbigland.com, milliondollarmastermind.com, and wholesaling $1 million land deals on Facebook. Thanks guys.